Hi everybody, my name is Cedric Papa and my digital unit plan is on the concepts of supply and demand. Supply and demand, a 12th grade unit in economics. Now, the reason why I decided to base my digital unit plan on these concepts is because I feel that understanding supply and demand is at the core of understanding all these economic issues that surround US society and in general the world. With understanding supply and demand, you can understand like terms like monetarism. You can understand things like inflation. You can understand why businesses decide to make one product over another. You can definitely get into the argument now about whether capitalism is working or if capitalism isn't working, whether capitalism is evil, whether capitalism is great. You can get into these all these great debates by just understanding the concepts of supply and demand. And it can help in all sorts of avenues. So again, if you don't grow up to be an economist, understanding supply and demand can help you if you're a business owner. And if you understand supply and demand, it can definitely help you just as a regular citizen in understanding the economic issues and how government deals with them and how people deal with them in general. So again, I feel fundamentally important to do this, and that's why I based my digital unit plan on this. So going down the line, this is my homepage, and here begins with my unit summary, which is essentially what I just told you right now, the reasons why supply and demand are something that people need to know about. And then in it, below that is my student learning objectives. So my student learning objectives are students will be able to comprehend the terms of supply and demand as they apply to products in a market economy. Students will illustrate the relationship between supply and demand through graphing. Students will apply their understanding of the factors affecting supply and demand to simulated problems. So again, what I feel is the best way to understand these concepts is by having students exercise their understanding almost immediately. Not to just tell them what it is and then hope and pray that they'll retain it until the test comes. So I always want to give them exercises. I always want them to be able to find the information relevant either through tasks or through things that they really know or real life situations. So that's my philosophy on this, and hopefully it'll work out. And that's how I've kind of framed my entire digital unit plan. So here's my California Content Standards History and Social Science Framework. And so here it's under 12.2, and it says students analyze the elements of America's market economy in a global setting. And then number one is understand the relationship of the concept of incentives to the law of supply and the relationship of concept of incentives and substitutes to the law of demand. And then the other one is discuss the effects of changes in supply and or demand on the relative scarcity, price, and quantity of particular products. So again, using these standards, it's helping me frame and focus what students really should know by the time they get out of high school. And being that it's 12th grade, you know, it's now or never. And below that, I have my big ideas. So one of my big ideas is why do people produce and buy certain things? Another one is the power of the consumer in a market economy. And the other one is how economics is involved in everyday life. And so these things I feel are fundamentally important because, again, it's making it relevant to who they are. And I want them to understand the kind of power they have as a consumer whenever they buy Starbucks or In-N-Out. Also, at the same time, I want them to know that if they ever start a business, why do people produce the certain things that they do and buy certain things that they do? And in reality, my main concern is that they understand that economics is all around them and that they should now be able to recognize those elements in their lives. All right, so let's go to my first lesson, which is my teacher lecture, and it's just supply and demand, electron basics. And here I have some pictures to preview what they're going to be kind of learning. Here I have a supply and demand graph, and then here showing the supply curve and the demand curve. And then I like to do this thing with political cartoons because economics and politics are always interwoven with each other. And this is great because it's not just visual in the sense of like, oh, it provides an ease of understanding a concept. Having political cartoons is good because it forces kids to critically think about what is going on in the cartoon and then activating their critical ability to analyze. And so I always feel like when you start doing that, you're really engaging a deeper level of thought and more likely for them to remember things. So going down here, my PowerPoint is also on file, so you can just download it real quick, super easy. And then here you can preview it. And so it's 12 slides. Again, I started with a political cartoon, and then I give them questions to help understand what's going on, and then sort of warm up their thinking, and then I give them the sort of straight information, like, oh, and I like to be funny. Sometimes it's not really, doesn't go that well, but I do my best. So like I'll say things like, I demand terms, and then, like, here we go. And then again, most of it is like visual, most of them is application. I want my students to constantly keep doing things. Like, I don't want them to constantly just sit there and listen and listen and listen and listen. And so what can we say about the products when the price is high? What can we say? What can we when the price is low? Again, these are questions that I keep asking my students, and they make answers. And then it sort of previews how to understand the next thing. So again, it's like, here's the information, here's a task, here's some information, here's a task, so that it's constantly being applied. And so it keeps going like that in that scenario. And then with certain concepts, here I have an embedded video, but you can't see it because the PowerPoint in and of itself is embedded in a site. So, and then here's some final things. The answer key to the final assessment of my lecture. And then here's my guided lecture notes. Now again, I make sure that everything stays in pace, that everything that's addressed in the lecture is addressed in my guided notes, so they can constantly know where they are and keep in pace with what's going on. Now I do everything I can to make sure that they can provide clean, organized work, and at the same time, so that when they look back on it and study, it's not a hot jumbled mess and it's just become useless for study material. So this is why I draw like this parts of the graph, as opposed to just letting them draw it themselves. And then again, provide these problems and provide spaces for them to write in. All right, so that's my lecture. So let's go to my Weber size. So that's my Weber size. So again, it's one thing to sort of just maintain the theme of supply and demand, and another thing to kind of preview what's gonna happen. So in this case, Investopedia is gonna be one of the things that they need to look up. And then here again, you can download the file from my Weber size, and then here is the Weber size previewed. And so here are some links, and then directions immediately following after. What I like to do is like use the snippet tool to take the top part, so it shows students, hey, this is where you should be at right now. If you're not at this area, then you've gone and messed up. So if you have, raise your hand and I will help you out. So it's just a good indication and a marker that everything's going right. So students aren't trying to do something, or like they're on this weird website that they're not supposed to be. And so here, my questions again are trying to guide students into understanding. In this case, this Weber size is about this restaurant called Cafe Chico, and they need to understand a graph of supply and demand about burritos and how, when changing the price, will affect the demand and supply of burritos. So they have to represent parts of a graph in this case, in the beginning, and then I have some critical thinking questions for them. They can write pretty much whatever they can, but as long as it's along the lines of what's written here. And then this part 2 of my Weber size, this is having them really being able to use the internet and develop those internet skills of like searching terms and finding information on their own, but guiding them by saying, okay, this is the website, navigate this website, and understanding the information that you need to understand to answer these questions. And what's important here is that the information found on this website will directly affect how you understand the next website, which is a game. And so the entire Weber size is designed to slowly build up to being able to accomplish this game. At the end, this is my last website, and this game is putting anybody who plays it as a person who's trying to start their own business, and the only data you have is data based on supply and demand. So from it, you make these choices, and hopefully you go take the right one, and until you get the perfect ending. And so at the end, I like to, instead of doing like a quiz or test, I really like writing. So I want students to write and tell me how they what they've learned. And this helps in the sense, like, one, it helps with their writing ability, And two, I feel like when you write about something, it's layered in your thinking even more than just checking a box off and whatever it may be. Okay, so let's go to my assessment. Mm. So here are my assessments. Let me just go through a few. So this is my assessments. I summarized all the assessments here. And so my entry level assessment is my chalkboard splash, which is something I like to do where it's like I'll write a key term in the middle of the chalkboard, or in this case, the whiteboard, because we live in the 21st century. And on it, I'll ask students, okay, so give me some words or some phrases that you think are associated with the word. So maybe I'll write down in the center supply, or theory of production, or cost of labor, or things like that. And then they just write down what they think. And so this helps me gauge what they kind of know, helps me be able to understand things that are common throughout the class, things that are consistently being missed, and from it, my lesson is that much more adapted to their understanding, so I don't have to go over things that they already know, and I don't miss things that they don't know. And so I like this because it gets kids moving, it gets them up from from the seats, and then they're like constantly talking, like, oh, you don't know that, or oh, I didn't know that either. It's like, oh, okay. So I like that because it's sort of this social experience. Um, Here, some of my favorites that I like to do, well, the two that really I really like doing is this metacognition, which I have an example of later down this page, and then this raft writing exercise, which also I have an example of at the bottom of this page. Now, my metacognition, I like this one because, again, I'm really into students critically thinking about themselves. And so this is like a series of questions that make students guide their thinking about thinking on a deeper level. So I'll ask them, like, what do you think you did well today? Why do you think you did well today? If now that you've understood why you think you've done well, what do you think the next lesson should be about and why? And so again, I ask these questions to really get them thinking, but in a sort of supported way. But I want them to start thinking deeper because these terms are complex, but they are everywhere. And so they need to be able to look beyond the surface of just the book and see it happen in their everyday lives. And then this raft one, so let me go down to the raft one to give you a better example. But this is my assessment timeline. So it shows like here things that I do throughout the unit. So this raft one is about supply and demand. Now raft is an acronym for role, audience, format, and topic. And what I like to do is like provide them a written assignment. And in this case, this one is about you are to write a letter of persuasion as if you were a specific product, like chicken, water, diamonds, puppies, whatever. You must convince why why a producer should produce you. And so I want my students, so it uses my students' imagination to really incorporate all these sort of concepts into this letter. And so here I make sure that the students understand what I'm looking for by saying changes in demand, demand elasticity of your product, supply elasticity of your product, and cost of inputs. And then here I show them a rubric of what I'm looking for. And then below is an example. So it's roughly like maybe a page, 3 paragraphs long. And so this product is, my name is Coca-Cola. And I'm not sure if you've heard of me, but I'm pretty famous. So again, I want them to have fun with it, but at the same time incorporate all the concepts they've learned and really get a form of what's going on. All right, so here is my metacognition questionnaire. Again, it's things that help them think about their thinking and who they are. All right, so my last thing here is my unit resources. So these are my unit resources. Again, especially with my websites, I want to make sure that my students have access to the actual website so they don't constantly have to be scouring and looking for it. They can just click on here and be good. See, like the BYU American Heritage is the first one, and so on and so forth. I want to make sure that the access is really easy, really clear for Investopedia. So in total, that's my digital unit plan. I just really want students to understand the concept of supply and demand, and this digital unit plan really helps because the kind of technology we have now makes teaching this type of really dry material something that's really interactive and fun. So I hope you enjoy. Hopefully use it in your class. So good luck.